We call this feelings GPS or emotional GPS in our programs. And now this is one that poster that I use for training purposes. And so in feelings GPS, when we talk to kids about what is a GPS for, it helps you find your way, right? And well, where do we want to go? What's our destination? We want to be calm and relaxed and happy, right? So if you look way up at the top, the purple phase is the calm one. And so the progression goes from top to bottom: purple, yellow, orange, and red. Purple phase, your child is his or her best self. Relaxed enough, all his or her social and coping skills are available at his or her respective developmental ability. So your child can be his or her best self, best friend. Your child can learn the best. And their human brain, as we mentioned before, is in charge. So your child has all of his or her language abilities and thinking abilities. So this is great. The yellow phase, all of a sudden, something's happened, something's gone wrong. And so now there's a little bit of stress, okay? And you can see that there's also a number key as well going down the side, down the left. And so now 4, 5, and 6 might be yellow phase. Something's gone wrong. I didn't get my way. There's a disagreement. Maybe there's an assignment that's a little harder than I expected. This is hard. The child doesn't like it. Now, in this yellow phase, the child's human brain still is intact. There's some frustration, but your child can still think and talk just as well as always. A little bit of frustration. And so you might see that with just like a little sigh, or, oh, this is annoying, a little protest, you know, that kind of thing. The orange phase moves from a little stress to distress. The child is now overwhelmed with feeling, though still in basic control, but you can tell that a child is in distress mode, the orange phase, when you start to see sudden movements. There's more lurching about. There's maybe like, if you again look at me in the little box, you might see the child's hands suddenly go to their head, like, a stomp, you know, I don't like this. Maybe a quick rip of a paper. A clenched fist or a jaw. So now you're seeing a little bit more physicality. Certainly the child could be crying at this point. And importantly, the child is now starting to lose a little bit of their cognitive ability. The dino brain is waking up and is starting to get its claws in your child's human brain. And so during this time, your child has a harder time thinking of plans, thinking of coping skills. And so you might know this is that tipping point where your child is still simmering, hasn't totally lost it and become out of control with screaming, crying, running around. It's not a full-out tantrum yet. So you can save it, and your child can save it. And we're going to talk about how in a second. First, I want to establish the armature here. If your child you and your child together can't can't stop it at the orange phase and go back up the GPS to yellow and purple, your child may tip into the red phase. The red phase is meltdown city. Your child is out of control, and this can look different. Screaming and crying. It's fight, flight, and freeze. It's the dino brain right here. So they could be running away. They could be running to hide in a closet, under a table, to escape. There could be screaming and arguing. They could totally shut down. There's imploding, right? Child just puts their head down, silent, non-responsive, right? So if you're on this call, you may have seen your child or someone you know perform, one of these behaviors, and you know that right now they're in the dino phase. They're in the red phase, and so they've been totally hijacked by the dino brain. This is their fight, flight, and freeze. And so when I say that their brainstem hijacks their mind, truly, they're not in control. They have lost control. And sometimes you might think that a child is still manipulating you. And sometimes over years, kids will take a red phase and a meltdown and eventually harness it, to try to manipulate you to get what they want. but in its source, at its origin, it was truly a loss of control. Most importantly, for you to know as a caregiver, kids lose their reason. They are completely unreasonable. They've regressed to ages 3 and 4. Think of arguing with a 3 and 4-year-old. They've also lost a lot of their language processing. So if you are talking to them, their human brain is now shut off. Their ancient dinosaur brain is taken over. And so your speech, if you talk to them and try to reason with them about the moral benefits of calming down, and you really shouldn't have done this, it'll only escalate your child and prolong the tantrum, the meltdown. So here's where I'm going to have some very specific instructions for you about how to intervene in a meltdown, right? Everything else, yellow and orange phase, is the last part of my talk when we're going to talk about prevention and coping skills and ways to avoid going to this. But once a child reaches this red phase, the dino brain, your child has only one job to do, and that's to calm down. The column down the right explains what the adult's role is at each of these stages. If you select the wrong intervention, the wrong support at the wrong time, you might escalate the child and push your child into meltdown mode. So it's really important to understand these levels. And so let's go down the right column. So when your child is at his or her calmest, relaxed self, doing his or her best functioning, life is good, but I don't want you all to get too cocky. Don't take it for granted and then be like, oh, my child's fine, I'm not, everything's fine. We actually want the child to be prepared that something could go wrong. So you want to use all of your tools and all of your flexibility and coping skills. So be ready for anything. And so if something goes wrong for you as the caregiver, you're mostly just saying like, you guys are doing great, how much fun you're having. But if something goes wrong, you want to start to facilitate. You want to intervene with question form. Question form means, how do you want to handle this? So you can ask these kind of questions. Notice it's open-ended. How do you want to handle this? Leaves it completely open to the child's creativity. Child could go left or right. If you can ask these kind of open questions, you are giving your child the gift of that coping thinking. You're developing that muscle for coping and navigating challenges. So you can ask those open-ended questions if things are going wrong in the purple phase. Actually, same thing in the yellow phase, as I said. Your child still has all of his or her cognitive ability and language ability, so you can still facilitate with questions. And if you want to just be simple, when your child's, you can use this over and over. How do you want to handle this? What do you want to do about this? What could you do now? What could you do next? So question form. So these first two phases is all questioning, and you want to just give your child the gift of coping skills. Your child's going to do all the creativity, and they really don't need too much of you because they can produce their solutions. Here's where it gets interesting. Now your child has moved to the orange phase. Now they are like, it's too hard. I hate this. Or crying. All of a sudden, the dino brain is starting to creep into the picture. And so because you must remember at this time, your child is starting to lose language and reason, you should no longer, I can't underline this enough, you should no longer be doing open-ended questions. How do you want to handle this? Do not do that, because when they're that distressed, that open-ended question will overwhelm them. I don't know. They'll start yelling, and you actually could either keep them in orange or even push them to red. So here's where, critically, you need to shift to one, okay, we're going to temporarily pause that demand or expectation. I'm going to release the pressure. We're going to do a pressure valve release here. And what you can say is, wait, hold on. I'm not saying you have to do this. I'm not saying we have to talk about X, Y, and Z now, right? Because you're seeing that the child is getting pushed into temper. It's not productive. So step one, temporarily pause or reduce the demand. You can always come back to it. This is not letting kids off the hook. So you're still being a good parent. So there's that piece. So temporarily pause the demand. Second, you're going to give the child one acceptable choice, right? Two different options. Okay, we can try to problem solve this now, or we can take a break, right? Something really simple. Notice it's called an acceptable choice, which means either thing the child chooses is okay with you, and it will help to avoid the dreaded red phase. You do not want the child to lose control. It feels so awful for the child and family. So again, orange phase, your child is distressed. You're seeing these sudden louder bursts of movement or volume. And so step one, I'm not saying we have to talk about this right now, right? Okay, let's pause. And then secondly, let's see, you can calm down here, or you can calm down somewhere else, right? You can calm down here, or you can go to your room for a little bit. We can problem solve this, or you can get a drink, you know? We can stick with this, or you can get a snack. So anything that's acceptable while pausing let your child get back to the yellow or purple phase, and then you can reattack that same issue. Really important. You are still a good parent if you are doing this. In fact, I think you're a heroic parent because you're helping to guide the child back to effective coping and problem solving. Okay. This last part is the dino brain, the dino technique. We're going to spend a little time on how you can handle tantrums and meltdowns. I'm going to need an assistant from my home. And so in a minute, I'm going to call my son who's in the room waiting for his cue to come and do a role play with me. But beforehand, so remember, as you can see, the first two phases, open-ended. How do you want to handle this? Orange phase, your child is beginning to lose cognition, lose their thought, lose their rational thinking. So you've accepted the narrowed choice, you've narrowed their choice to 2. Red phase, there's only one thing your child can do. Your child is out of control, and the red phase, a meltdown, effectively is an energy wave that takes over your child. And if you think of a wave in the ocean, what does it do? It keeps rolling towards the shore, it rises, it crests, right? It crashes on the shore until it runs out of energy, and then it recedes. Same thing happens with a child during a meltdown. You can't talk your child out of a red phase. You might be able to talk them out of an orange phase. But your words, there's nothing that can happen because this wave has been activated. So therefore, your child's only task is to calm down. One choice. Okay, so first, if you know that your child has a habit of melting down, you want to make the anger plan that I mentioned earlier. All right, here's our meltdown plan. First, let's think of a safe place. Could be at home, somewhere in the house. You could have one on each floor. Where can you go if you are really upset, if you're really mad? And so you can establish a safe and good place for the child to go if he or she is in red phase on the first floor, and maybe there's another place, maybe their room on the second floor, if you have that kind of a house. Or maybe there's one place. Now this place, again, we're destigmatizing anger. So this is not a punishment where they have to be in solitary confinement. We actually want there to be comforting items there. Books, drawing materials, fidgets, putty, clay, anything, stuffed animals, anything that might help the child regain their calm and their control. So this is actually a compassionate response to temper, because as we're learning tonight, it's not your child's fault. When they get to 10, to a red phase, it's not his or her fault. They've lost control, and they don't need us to make it worse by rubbing their noses in it, by offering consequences. It just needs to pass. So if you are out and about, when we are allowed to go out and about again, let's say you are at Target, and there's the classic meltdown near the toy aisle. Your child wants to get toys, you say no, and there's the meltdown, right? You can have a calming spot. You could prearrange that a calming spot is right outside the door, so you quickly hustle the child out the door if possible. More on that in a second. Or perhaps it's in the car. The car is a nice sound booth, a soundproof booth where you can go to cry it out, let that wave pass. Some kids will freeze and drop in place and continue tantruming. We're gonna get to that right now. Okay, your child hits the red phase, screaming, ah, dinosaur brain, I hate you, you're the worst parent ever, right? Picking things up, threateningly as if to throw. Maybe they are throwing things. And so you say, wait, you're upset. Your only job is to calm down, and I'm going to be over here. That's the script. Wait, you're upset. Your only job is to calm down. I'm going to be over here.